My early career path was easy to select. My father was a Methodist minister, and early on in our life, I was brought up in the church. And then the Goodwill actually recruited my father from the church back in the early 60s up in Pennsylvania. We moved down to Houston when I was 6 years old. I was brought up around Goodwill, and I was the youngest of three kids. And for me, that was what I always wanted to do. And so in the summers when I was growing up, I'd work at Goodwill, and I'd get to know all the amazing people of Goodwill. And I fell in love with the mission of what we do, of changing lives through the power of work. When I got into high school, I was driving Goodwill trucks. And then finally, when I got into college, I was enrolled in an executive training program for Goodwill out of Washington, D.C. When I graduated from my university, I went to work full-time at Goodwill. I knew early on that I wanted Goodwill. I thought about my freshman, sophomore year of college, am I going to be a lawyer? Am I going to go to seminary to be a minister? Or do I go into Goodwill? And I made the choice that Goodwill was the direction I wanted to go. And here I am, 41 years later, and I think it was the greatest decision I could have ever made.
This sounds fantastic. When did Goodwill and the vision of charity become important to you?
I think that obviously Goodwill was an important part of my life growing up, but the vision of charity, the mission of charity, let's say, is something that's always been embedded in my heart. I think my family helped that happen. My father took us places, my mother took us places that most of my friends didn't get to observe. Supporting people at Thanksgiving, helping people at Christmas, helping people who were down on their luck. That's what we did as kids. And so I think the charity moment came into my life early on, and I knew that this was going to be the right decision for me, and I've never regretted it. Well, I'm the president and CEO of Goodwill Industries of Houston. I haven't always been, by the way. When I first started out of college, I was a executive intern. And then I became a director. And then after I finished my executive training out of Washington, D.C. in 1983, I became a vice president of the organization, and I was looking for an opportunity to go run a Goodwill. And so I took this, Goodwill came to me because my father passed away in 1986. And so the board gave me the opportunity of a lifetime to become the CEO at 27 years old. And so I'll just say to you, my leadership today has evolved because that was a very small Goodwill back in 1986. Now we're over $100 million in revenue. Now we have about 1,800 employees. We've got locations all over the community and the city, and we're serving more people than we ever have before. I have an executive team that reports directly to me, and we work on how can we make Goodwill stronger in this city. And then we have so many other incredible employees throughout our ranks at every store, at our corporate office, at our job connection centers where we provide our mission services. So on a daily basis, what is fun for me as the CEO is not only do I get to interact with some amazing people, but I get to be out in the community. I get to represent, be the spokesman, if you would, of Goodwill. And I get to just see all facets of our business, even as we've grown bigger. So I'm responsible for a budget of over $100 million and a lot of great employees and all of the challenges that come with that. But it's an exciting career. You know, Hurricane Harvey, I look back on that, was devastating for our entire community, and it devastated many businesses, including Goodwill. So there were many of our facilities that were flooded, that were closed for several months as we were trying to rebuild those. But what we found when we started reopening our locations a few days after that storm is many of our employees were affected in a big way. They had lost their homes. Their homes had been flooded. And so we started working with a lot of our partners out in the community and trying to assist our employees to get their homes and their apartments back to a point where they could live in those again. You know, we're all on the verge of homelessness. And when you're dealing with Goodwill employees, sometimes it's a paycheck away. And that seems to be the case around the United States as well. So what we did is we not only opened our stores again, we helped our employees, and then the community began to donate. We are not a disaster organization. We worked very closely with the Red Cross and some of the other outstanding organizations in our city. But one of the things we're a training facility that gives people an opportunity to become employed and to have a career. That's what Goodwill does. So we work with our community partners when it comes to donations and other things during a disaster, because we let them do their job, and then Goodwill comes in and helps the people get back into their roles, get back into the world, employed, get back, have another job. That's what Goodwill does every day. COVID was we're still living with COVID if you think about it, but when COVID hit, from a CEO perspective, let me just throw this because everybody has their own story. But one day we're running full speed as an organization, and then we hear about COVID, and then the next week, literally the next week, we were forced to close all facilities by the state of Texas, because we were not an organization that had to stay open. And so we wanted to stay open, but we were asked to close. So we had some decisions to make. How do we help our employees through a pandemic? So for 3 weeks, we paid our employees while we were closed. We were closed for about a month and a half. The state of Texas kept us closed that long. And we paid our employees for 3 weeks, and then we started looking at the calculations with all of the government support that was being provided to people because of COVID. We found that if we furloughed our employees, they would actually make more money because of all those extra incentives the government was giving. So we communicated that message out to all of our employees. We told them to be safe, hey, but you'll get more from the government right now than you will working for us full time. So we didn't want to leave anybody empty. So we made sure the gap of us paying was intercepted by the government gap on the furlough of unemployment. Nobody missed a paycheck. And then when it was all over and it was time to come back to work, that's where the real challenges occurred. Many people didn't want to come back. And we see that throughout our country still to this day. But many of our employees we couldn't get hold of. Many of our employees chose not to come back. So once we brought the smaller group back, we had to work a little harder until we could figure out the new normal with COVID. One of the things we learned, though, Dr. Burns, is we learned that we have to be a little more flexible as an employer. We have some hybrid schedules when it comes to folks at our corporate office. Some of them are working from home. And then we have a day or two a week that they come into our corporate office. But when you're in the retail business, which is the majority of our employees, you can't do hybrid work. And so we had to be a little more flexible as we opened back up and obeyed all the guidelines about COVID. We wanted to keep our employees safe. And we did. And our employees were ready to get back to work. And I'm so happy that that part of the COVID experience is over. I learned a lot. I also got older. It feels like the stress just, there was a ton of stress on all of us. But I look at pictures before COVID, and then I look at pictures now, and I'm going, the stress got to me. So we did a lot of great things in our Goodwill community. Now, how has it impacted the regional communities? It's still hard to find people. We're constantly working as an organization to bring people in to fill the positions. But I think it's changed our world. I look at things differently than I used to. I think most employers look at things differently than they used to. And I'll give you one great example. I was talking with some of our employees the other day, and I said, where do you live? Are you close by or are you far away? And one of our employees who's on a hybrid schedule said she lived out in Magnolia, way out. And her commute was unbelievable prior to COVID. Once we started the hybrid schedule, she said to me, I'm able to work from home 3 days a week and get more done than I do in the office, but I come in twice a week so I can see everyone because I like the socialization. If I can keep her, this particular employee and others, but if I can keep her happier because she doesn't have to commute every day on the freeways, I think that's a win-win for this organization. And I feel others feel that same way throughout their communities as well. So how do we cope with the ongoing changes? Our world has changed. You think back into my career, the people that are watching this will probably get a kick out of it. I mean, we didn't even have fax machines. Think about it. Now nobody uses a fax machine. We didn't have computers at our desk. We had one mainframe computer in a cold room. And the world has changed. Here's one of the things I give advice on. Hey, you've got to change with it. No matter how old you are, no matter what your position is, you have to continue to reinvent your organization and reinvent yourself. That way you can cope with the ongoing changes of this world. One of the things that I find is that employees look at their time at Goodwill or at their job a little differently now. And we know that there are options for them. Everybody wants good employees right now. So what it's done for us is it's made us relook at pay scales. It's made us look at benefits. It's made us look at why would Goodwill be a fun place to work? And hopefully the majority of our employees would think that it's a place that they feel comfortable. In fact, when we're together with all of our managers, all of our assistant managers, and this is 100 people if you think about it, because we've got about 50 stores in the community and close to 100 donation centers in the community that are combined with our stores and then separate, plus our Job Connection centers and our Goodwill Connect center. So if you think about it, these amazing individuals, these guys, are expecting life to be different for them, and we've got to make it more fun. We've got to try to be more caring about our employees. I think those are the lessons that we've learned as we cope for the future of change in our businesses. First off, let me just say I'm very, very honored to be associated in any way with the University of Houston. The University of Houston is an amazing opportunity for many, many people. And so when I had the chance to meet so many of the people from the University of Houston who recruited me in to serve on this board, it was a big honor for me. And so I feel that serving and giving back to the community is an important part of what we do. I was always taught that one of the things you have to do is do your job very well, but you also have to give to others a lot. And so the advice I would give to anybody is just give to others and serve on boards like this. If I had advice to give to students that were watching this today about the world of business, I would say be bold, be kind, enjoy competition. Competition's good. But remember, life goes by in a hurry. People don't get it when you're in your teens and 20s. They don't get it. But I still think of myself like that. And I grew up all of a sudden very quickly. And so I would just say, be better than the next candidate that's looking for that job. When you go in, be kinder, hustle more, be aware of that competition, that spirit. Be an employer that you'd want to hire. Think about that for a minute. If you were sitting on the other side of the desk and you came in for that interview, would you hire you or would you hire that other person because they came across better? Be really good at your interviewing techniques. And by the way, if I can ever help anybody with that, that's kind of what we do at Goodwill too. I'd always be willing to help and assist with ideas from a large employer of what it's like when you're looking for a job. Hope that answered that question, Dr. Burns. Well, I'm still trying to figure out what all my personal strengths are, but one of the things, I've always enjoyed people. And not everybody does, by the way. I get that. So everybody has different positives in their lives and different ways they look at life. But I love people, period. And it's all people. When I was a boy, I was taught that you have to treat everyone the same, whether they're the millionaire in the neighborhood or whether it's the person that's doing the janitorial duties at your office. And I've always done that. And our team does that too. That's why we call Goodwill a family, absolutely a family. But my professional success, I think, has just been being good at what you do every day because you keep coming back and you learn. I've had to keep learning. Just because I am the CEO of this organization doesn't mean I put the books down. So I have to have so many hours a year of credit in order to keep my certified executive status in the Goodwill movement. But more importantly, I learn from everyone. And I really learn from my sons. I have 2 adult sons and I have some grandchildren and some wonderful daughter-in-laws. And let me just tell you, I learn from them and I watch them. And believe it or not, they tell me when I'm doing something wrong. And so, and wrong meaning my fashion style isn't correct. I'm doing something that people will laugh at. You've got to stay current and you have to learn from all the people around you.
This is amazing. So now tell us about your initiatives. Many of us at the University of Houston Healing Program follow you on LinkedIn and social media. You've got a recent award. You've got many new initiatives. Would you like to tell us a few things about them?
Sure. Let me talk about what Goodwill's doing first. We serve all people who have barriers to employment. A barrier in our world could be a disability. It could be alcoholism, drug addiction, homelessness. It could be the person that just can't seem to keep the job. So we care about all people first. But some of our initiatives that we are really very excited about and continue to be, one is our Veterans Initiative. We're one of the largest providers for veteran services in this city. When a person comes back from serving our country, we then get the opportunity to serve them. That's pretty special. And so we really praise our veterans and we work through them with a lot of our programs to get them jobs out in the community. We also work with any other type of individual. And what we do with that is a person can come into Goodwill and be trained, in many cases be certified. We have partnerships with Google, where if you come into our Google program, you get a certification from Google and Goodwill, which you can take to your employer in the IT world. We have a program for apartment maintenance technicians. Right now, there are so many needs for people at these large apartment complexes to handle the day-to-day maintenance. They come into our program. They train with us every night I think it's for about 7 weeks. And then they graduate. And when they graduate, the day of graduation, all of the employers of all the large apartment complexes in town are at our job fair. They have a cap and gown on. They get their certification, and then they walk over and get a job. That's pretty neat. And it's one of my favorite things that we do. Another one of the initiatives, and by the way, all of our programs are free. They're free. We want to help the community. That's what Goodwill's been doing in Houston since 1945. But one of our other big push programs right now is called Employability. Employability is helping a group of people who may have fallen through the gaps because of their disability. They have schooled out, and what that term means, when they turn 22, they can no longer be a part of the high school system anymore. And so many times they can't go to college because of circumstances in their lives, maybe a disability. And we bring them to Goodwill. We put them in a classroom for 2 weeks to learn how to work, because so many of these individuals have never worked in their lives. We give them an opportunity to learn how to work, and then we take them over to one of our large Goodwill Connect stores. And there they have career coaches that meet with them and train them how to work. They're paid while they're doing this. So in many cases, it's their first paycheck in their life. And we're changing their lives. We're seeing the stories when they graduate. We just started that program this year. We've gone through 4 cohorts, and it's very touching when you can take a person that doesn't know what they can do and has no self-esteem or confidence and give them that self-esteem, confidence training where at the end of the program, they're standing up a little taller, they're smiling a little more, and they get a job. And that's the thing that keeps us motivated at Goodwill. Those are some of our initiatives right now at Goodwill Houston. Goodwill does change people's lives every day. And so I have so many stories. Where do I pick? But let me just suggest that if people ever really wanted to see some of our videos of some of our incredible success stories, go to our website at goodwillhouston.org, goodwillhouston.org, and you can look at all of our videos from our success stories. But I want to talk about one person that recently retired from Goodwill. She retired from Goodwill because her body began to break down. So let me explain what that means. In 1970, Linda Parrish came to Goodwill looking for an opportunity. Linda was born with no arms. She stood probably a lot shorter than most people because of her disability. But she did everything with her feet, everything. And for all of these years until last month when she retired, she's run our switchboard at Goodwill with her feet. And she did it with a personality of joy. She did it with the biggest smile you would ever experience. And she had so many issues in her life that she had to overcome. She drove a car on the Houston freeways when she was younger with her feet. She is just one of the amazing people who became a part of the leadership of Goodwill. And if Linda can do it, I can do it. If Linda can do it, you can do it. You know, we all have our issues in our lives. We all have those moments of what are we going to do? And then when you come into Goodwill and the doors of Goodwill and you meet the Lindas and the Rebeccas and the Wendells and all the people who are having their lives changed by a job, that's what it's all about. You've got to start somewhere. And that's what Goodwill does every day. So go to goodwillhouston.org and look at some of those videos. We'd be honored to have you view our website.